10 ancient discoveries that don't fit the official timeline. Even top scientists can't explain. Hello, and welcome to the Ancient History Channel. My friend, have you ever wondered whether the history we've been taught is truly complete? Or somewhere out there, are there still missing pieces? Stories no one dares to mention? Simply because they don't fit with what modern society believes to be true. You see, throughout the journey of uncovering the past, archaeologists have often found themselves in a rather ironic situation. The deeper they dig, the more they uncover things that simply cannot be explained. Artifacts that appear out of time, technologies that seem far beyond the capabilities of ancient civilizations, and even traces suggesting that history may have unfolded in a completely different way. It may sound hard to believe, but these are exactly the kinds of discoveries that continue to puzzle scientists. Because if these findings are real, and clearly they are right in front of us, then it could mean that the timeline we've trusted for so long may not be as accurate as we once thought. So the question is, who created these things? Where did they come from? And why was their knowledge so far ahead of its time? In this video, we're going to explore 10 of the strangest ancient discoveries ever found. Mysteries that even the world's top scientists have yet to fully explain. And who knows, by the time you finish watching, you might start seeing history in a completely different way. Now, are you ready to explore with me? If you are, let's begin with the very first discovery. Skeletons staked through the heart that terrified all of Europe. If one day someone were to excavate an ancient grave, and inside, instead of an ordinary skeleton, they found a body with an iron rod driven straight through its heart, what would you think? A murder? A ritual? Or evidence of something people once believed was real? Vampires? This isn't a story from a movie. It's a real discovery in Sozopol, a small town on the Black Sea coast of Bulgaria. During an excavation near an ancient monastery, archaeologists uncovered 2 skeletons dating back about 800 years. But what made everyone shudder was this. Each skeleton had an iron rod driven directly through its chest, as if the dead had been pinned to the ground to ensure they could never rise again. Just hearing that sends chills down your spine, doesn't it? According to the National Museum of History in Bulgaria, this was not a rare case. Historian Božidar Dimitrov stated that the practice of driving iron or wooden stakes through the hearts of the dead was once widespread across many regions of Bulgaria, even lasting into the early 20th century. People in the past believed that those considered evil in life, perhaps cruel nobles, corrupt clergy, or individuals shunned by their communities, would not rest peacefully after death, but instead become the undead. And if they weren't stopped, they would return. That's why those iron stakes were not just lifeless objects, they were a form of protection for the living. People believed that piercing the heart would pin the evil soul to the grave, preventing it from rising at midnight to spread terror. According to estimates, more than 100 skeletons like this have been discovered across Bulgaria, most of them male. Women were rarely suspected of being vampires in the beliefs of that time. However, everything changed when the story spread to Venice. At a mass grave on the island of Lazaretto Nuovo, researchers discovered the skeleton of a woman with a brick tightly wedged between her jaws, meant to prevent the female vampire from feeding on victims of a devastating epidemic that swept through the city in the 16th century. Anthropologist Matteo Borini from the University of Florence suggested that this discovery on the small island of Lazaretto Nuovo in Venice is evidence of a medieval belief that vampires were responsible for the spread of disease, such as the mysterious illness known as the Black Death, actually the plague, which claimed the lives of about 1/3 of Europe's population. When science was not advanced enough to explain the cause, people were forced to find a culprit, and vampires became the perfect target. What's more, what people saw when they exhumed bodies only reinforced those beliefs. After death, bodies can swell due to the buildup of gases, hair and nails may appear to keep growing, and blood can even seep from the mouth. Today, we understand these as normal decomposition processes, but to people in the Middle Ages, these were signs that the person was still alive. Shrouds decaying due to bacteria could expose the teeth, making it seem as though the corpse was eating its own burial cloth. And from that, the image of the shroud eater was born, one of the most terrifying early prototypes of the vampire. In medical and religious texts of the time, the undead were also believed to be the cause of epidemics, slowly draining the life force of the dead to gain strength and return to the world of the living. To destroy them, people didn't just drive stakes through their hearts, they also removed the burial cloth from the mouth and inserted objects that could not be swallowed, such as bricks, or took any measures necessary to seal the mouth of the returning evil. And then, centuries later, that image was reborn in literature when Bram Stoker wrote the novel Dracula in 1897, turning vampires into an immortal symbol in popular culture. But in the end, the most terrifying thing is not vampires. It is human fear when faced with death and unable to explain it. The crypt, containing 281 forgotten mummies on an Italian mountain. Just imagine this. One day, you're standing inside an ancient church high up in the mountains. Everything around you is so quiet you can hear the wind echoing through the walls, and then suddenly you discover that right beneath your feet lies a crypt filled with hundreds of bodies stacked on top of one another. What would that feel like? This isn't a scene from a movie, it's a real discovery in Roccapelago, a small village perched in the north-central mountains of Italy. During the restoration of an old church there, workers uncovered a passage leading underground. At first, people probably assumed it was just an ordinary crypt, like many others found in historic European churches. But when light finally reached the darkness below, every assumption fell apart. It wasn't just a few skeletons, it was hundreds of bodies. A total of 281 individuals were found piled together in a confined space. Adults, children, even infants who never had the chance to grow up were among them. But what left archaeologists completely stunned was that many of these bodies had not decomposed. They were still preserved, skin still clung to bone, tendons remained visible, hands had dried out, yet still held their positions, as if frozen in prayer. According to experts such as Donato Labate, these individuals likely lived between the 16th and 18th centuries, a small isolated mountain community that lived simple lives, yet left behind something remarkably unique after death. What makes this story even more unusual is how they were laid to rest. These bodies did not decay in the typical way. Thanks to two small windows in the church walls, air circulated continuously, creating the perfect conditions for natural mummification. No chemicals, no complex techniques, just time and environment doing all the work. As researchers took a closer look, they discovered that the bodies were still wearing the clothes they had been buried in. Cloaks, thick stockings, shawls, everything remained. The garments, made of wool, linen, and cotton, were simple yet carefully crafted, with delicate decorative details at the cuffs and collars. According to expert Iolanda Silvestri, these clothes reflect a modest lifestyle, nothing extravagant, but clearly made with care and attention. And that's not all. Alongside the bodies were personal belongings, rings, necklaces, religious medallions, crosses made from gold, silver, wood, stone, and even glass. Together, they seem like messages sent from the world of the living to the world beyond. But perhaps the most mysterious discovery was a letter found almost perfectly preserved. Archaeologists believe it may represent a kind of agreement between the deceased and God. In the letter, the person asks for forgiveness for 5 sins committed during their lifetime. A prayer, but also a final confession before crossing into the next world. And then there's one detail that many people find especially haunting. These bodies were not carefully laid to rest as in traditional burials. Instead, they were dropped down through an opening above the church. As a result, many of them ended up in strange positions, stacked in layers, some even forming what looks like a human pyramid. Can you picture that? A cramped space where hundreds of bodies have remained piled together for centuries. And there's more. Researchers also discovered mummified rats among the remains. They likely died from toxic gases that had built up inside the crypt. This only adds to the dark and mysterious atmosphere of the place. But the story doesn't end with the eerie imagery. Deeper studies are gradually revealing how this community once lived, the kind of labor they performed, what they ate, and the diseases they suffered from. Scientists are now conducting DNA analysis, examining teeth, studying tissue samples, even reconstructing 3D facial models of some of the deceased. And do you know what's coming next? Once the research is complete, some of these mummies will be placed on display inside the very same church. That means the people who have slept for hundreds of years will, in a way, meet the world once again. Just thinking about it is enough to give anyone a sense of excitement, and I'm sure you're no exception. The remains of the world's largest thunderbird discovered in Australia. Can you believe it? Right in the middle of the arid heart of Central Australia, a place that seems to be nothing but wind and sand. Scientists have uncovered a secret buried beneath the ground that has left the entire paleontological community stunned. This discovery wasn't just a few bone fragments or faint traces, it was an almost intact skeleton of a creature described as an extreme evolutionary experiment, a giant bird known as a thunderbird that lived as far back as 8 million years ago. Yes, you heard that right, 8 million years. But what sends chills down people's spines isn't just its age, it's its size and appearance. Scientists describe this thunderbird as standing up to 10 feet tall and weighing at least 1,100 pounds, comparable in size to a large dinosaur. But even more bizarre is the way its body seems to combine anatomical features that feel strangely mismatched. A massive beak protruding from a relatively small head, mounted on a huge, bulky body, creating a form that is both peculiar and terrifying. This species has been named Dromornis sturtoni, also known by the haunting nickname Sturton's thunderbird, and it's not by coincidence that it's considered an extreme evolutionary experiment. Its body structure is a strange combination: a relatively small head attached to an oversized beak, a massive torso, and incredibly sturdy legs, all forming a creature that feels both familiar and deeply unsettling. Of course, what makes this discovery truly remarkable isn't just its size or shape, it's the condition of the skeleton. According to Dr. Adam Yates, the bones were found in their original anatomical positions, almost completely undisturbed. In other words, this may be a fully intact skeleton, something any paleontologist would dream of finding in their lifetime. But as you can imagine, excavating a fossil like this is no simple task. It requires an extraordinary level of patience. Even the smallest mistake in assembling the bones could completely distort our understanding of what this ancient creature actually looked like. That's why the process moves slowly, step by step, like solving a puzzle that's millions of years old. Previously, scientists had discovered another specimen near this area, but it consisted only of scattered bone fragments, far from enough to reconstruct the full form. This time, however, the newly discovered skeleton is believed to belong to a female, and having both specimens has allowed researchers to begin identifying differences between males and females, an important piece in understanding this so-called demon duck. If we travel back about 8 million years, these massive creatures once roamed Australia's dry forests, using their enormous beaks to eat fruit and possibly even prey on smaller animals. A giant that was both omnivorous and formidable, enough to make any creature of that time think twice. And the place where it was found, Alcuda, is not just an ordinary excavation site. It is, in fact, a vast fossil treasure trove, where numerous ancient animals have been discovered, including early kangaroos and ancestral marsupials. But perhaps it is this thunderbird that brings the prehistoric world to life more vividly than ever before. By now, you're probably starting to realize the evolutionary history of Earth is far more complex than what we've been taught. And sometimes, all it takes is a single skeleton lying silently underground for millions of years to rewrite the entire story of life. Wouldn't you agree? 700-year-old Buddha head, swallowed by tree roots. Can you believe it if I told you that? In the middle of an ancient temple complex hundreds of years old, there is a Buddha statue, not placed on an altar, not housed inside a main hall, but instead tightly embraced by massive tree roots, as if nature itself is deliberately holding on to some hidden secret. Just imagining it gives you chills, doesn't it? Yet this is a completely real story, and it takes place in Ayutthaya, a city that was once among the most magnificent in Thailand. Let's go back to the year 1350. Ayutthaya was founded and quickly became the second capital of the Kingdom of Siam. It wasn't by chance that this place came to symbolize power. From the 14th to the 18th century, Ayutthaya was like the heart of Southeast Asia, a bustling center of trade, cultural exchange, and thriving religious life. The city was built on river islands, surrounded by water, making it ideal for commerce and easy to defend. Towering temples, golden Buddha statues gleaming brilliantly, and majestic architecture all combined to create a scene so grand that if you stood there, you might feel as if you had stepped into an empire that could never fall. But history is never that predictable. In 1767, disaster struck. Burmese forces from Myanmar invaded, launching one of the most devastating attacks in Southeast Asia at the time. Temples were destroyed, Buddha statues were beheaded, Fires raged everywhere, and the entire city was swallowed by smoke and ruin. A place that had once reached the height of prosperity was suddenly reduced to a shattered battlefield. It wasn't just a material loss, it was a profound blow to the culture and spirit of the people. And yet, Ayutthaya's story didn't end with destruction. In the 20th century, the Thai government began restoring what remained. Brick by brick, temple by temple, the past was carefully preserved and rebuilt. Then, in 1991, Ayutthaya was recognized as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. From a land of ruins, it gradually came back to life, becoming a destination that captures the world's attention. But among hundreds of relics, there is one detail that makes everyone stop and stare. The Buddha head nestled within the roots of a tree at Wat Mahathat. This statue is around 700 years old, and the strange thing is, no one knows exactly how it ended up there. Think about it. How could such a sacred object become lost at the base of a tree? One theory suggests that, during the chaos of war, a soldier hid the Buddha head in the roots to protect it from destruction. Over time, the tree, likely a Bodhi tree, grew larger, and its roots slowly wrapped around the statue, creating the image we see today. But that's only a theory. There is no definitive evidence to confirm it. What's truly remarkable is that when you look at the statue, you don't just see something unusual, you feel something deeper. The roots surrounding the Buddha's face don't give a sense of destruction. On the contrary, they seem to protect and shelter it. The scene feels both mysterious and peaceful, as if nature and humanity have become one. And perhaps it is precisely this image that makes Ayutthaya so special. It is not just the ruins of a lost empire, it is a testament to the endurance of time. Despite war, destruction, and loss, this place still stands, telling its story in its own unique way. So if one day you find yourself standing before that Buddha head in the tree roots, do you think it's merely a coincidence? Or is it the way history and nature have come together to preserve a piece of Ayutthaya's soul? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below this video. 450 giant circles in the Amazon rainforest. People have long believed that the Amazon rainforest is a wild, untouched land, somewhere so ancient and pristine that human beings have never truly left a deep mark on it. But then, an unexpected discovery forced everyone to rethink that assumption. Deep within those dense forests, hundreds of massive circular shapes began to emerge, not because anyone went looking for them, but because parts of the forest were cleared. And in that very moment, a secret buried for thousands of years finally started to reveal itself. Specifically, scientists have identified more than 450 mysterious structures scattered across Acre State in western Brazil. These shapes are far from random. They consist of large earthworks forming circles, squares, and even straight connecting lines, almost like a carefully planned system. They are known as geoglyphs, massive designs etched into the ground. But the question that puzzles everyone is, who created them and for what purpose? Hearing this, you might immediately think of Stonehenge in England, right? And yes, many researchers have drawn comparisons between these geoglyphs and the famous stone monument in Wiltshire. The difference is, instead of erecting stones, the ancient people of the Amazon chose to shape the land itself, creating structures that span an enormous area of up to about 5,000 square miles. That number alone raises an important question. Are these simply isolated traces, or could they be the remnants of a forgotten civilization? As researchers dug deeper, scientists from the UK and Brazil uncovered something even more surprising. It turns out that the forests we once believed to be virgin may not be entirely natural after all. According to Dr. Jennifer Watling, these structures provide clear evidence that ancient humans once lived in and significantly shaped this region long ago. To better understand this, researchers reconstructed the vegetation history surrounding the geoglyphs over the past 6,000 years. They didn't just study the surface, they excavated deeper, collecting soil samples from both inside and outside the structures. Then, they analyzed phytoliths, tiny plant fossils made of silica. It may sound complex, but simply put, these microscopic traces allow scientists to determine what kinds of plants once grew there, whether fires occurred, and how humans influenced the environment. And the results were even more surprising. Ancient people in this region did not burn down vast areas of forest for agriculture, nor did they destroy nature the way we often assume. Instead, they created small, controlled clearings, mainly within bamboo forests, to build these mysterious structures. Not only that, They also actively cultivated and maintained valuable plant species, especially palm trees. Over time, the region evolved into something like a prehistoric natural supermarket, a place where humans could harvest resources while still maintaining ecological balance. Hearing this, does it challenge what you've always believed? It suggests that ancient people were not primitive in the way we often imagine. In fact, they may have understood how to live in harmony with the forest better than modern humans do. So when we look at these giant circles, they may not simply be ceremonial sites, even though some theories suggest they were used for occasional ritual gatherings. On a deeper level, they could represent an entire way of life, a way humans once interacted with nature in a fundamentally different way. And here's the most fascinating part. The biodiversity we see in parts of the Amazon today may actually be the result of those ancient human activities. In other words, what we consider natural today may in fact have been quietly shaped by human hands thousands of years ago. If these circles had not been accidentally revealed by deforestation, they might still be lying there, hidden beneath the canopy. And we would continue to believe that the Amazon had never been touched by humans. But now things are different, and I think you already understand how. 2,500-year-old rust-free sword reveals the astonishing metallurgical secrets of the ancients. Some ancient artifacts, once excavated, spark only mild curiosity, but others leave the entire archaeological community stunned. The legendary sword of Bulgarian is one of those remarkable discoveries. More than half a century ago, during an archaeological excavation in China, researchers opened an ancient tomb buried deep underground. At first, they believed it was simply an ordinary noble's grave from ancient times. However, when the box containing weapons was opened, everyone was astonished to see a sword lying quietly inside, shining so brightly that it looked as if it had been forged only yesterday. What made the discovery even more unbelievable was the fact that the sword had been buried underground for about 2,500 years. In the damp environment of an ancient burial chamber, most metals would normally corrode or rust over time. Yet this sword appeared to be almost completely unaffected. Its surface remained bright, its decorative patterns were still clearly visible, and the blade was so sharp that it demanded caution. There is even a famous story among archaeologists. When one researcher picked up the sword to examine it more closely, he accidentally touched the edge of the blade. The result was immediate. His finger was cut and began to bleed. A blade that had slept for more than 2 millennia yet remained that sharp. Just hearing about it sounds almost unbelievable, doesn't it? The sword was discovered in 1965 in Jiangling County, located in Hubei. It measures about 21.9 inches in length. Although it is not very large, it carries extremely significant historical and cultural value. When researchers closely examined the area near the hilt, they found 8 ancient characters carefully engraved on the blade. The inscription can be translated roughly as, "The king of Yue, Gojian, made this sword for his personal use." Because of this inscription, the weapon was immediately linked to the famous historical figure Gojian. If you have heard stories from ancient Chinese history, this name is probably familiar. The legendary rivalry between Gojian and Fu Shai is remembered as one of the most famous tales of perseverance and political strategy in ancient history. For that reason, when a sword believed to belong to this king was discovered, it instantly became the center of attention for both scholars and the public. Today, the sword is regarded as a national treasure of China. For many people, its symbolic importance is even compared to Excalibur, the mythical weapon of King Arthur in Western culture. But what truly puzzles scientists is not only its historical significance, it is also the advanced technology hidden behind the sword. When experts analyzed its metallic composition, they discovered that it was made from several elements, including copper, iron, lead, tin, and sulfur. Among these, copper makes up the largest proportion. At first glance, this might sound like a typical ancient alloy. However, the real mystery lies in how the materials were distributed throughout the blade. Studies revealed that different sections of the sword contain different alloy compositions. This means that ancient blacksmiths deliberately adjusted the metal structure in different parts of the sword to achieve the best possible performance. The edge of the blade, which needed to remain extremely sharp, was crafted using a different method, while the central body, where durability was more important, was treated with another formula. For a technology developed more than 2,000 years ago, this represents an extraordinarily sophisticated level of metallurgy. The decorative patterns on the sword also amazed many researchers. The intricate designs were engraved with remarkable precision, forming detailed geometric patterns that even modern technology sometimes requires multiple complex steps to reproduce. When people look at the Sword of Gojian, they do not simply see an ancient weapon. They see clear evidence of the astonishing technological skill possessed by ancient craftsmen. It is a relatively small sword, but within it lies a great secret of history, the knowledge, engineering ability, and craftsmanship of human beings who lived 2,500 years ago. 3,700-year-old ancient CD that still baffles science. What would you think if I told you that, in a world with no modern machinery, no electricity, and no advanced technology, there existed a mysterious recording that resembles an ancient version of a CD? It sounds unbelievable, doesn't it? But this object is completely real, and it has puzzled archaeologists for more than a century. That object is known as the phaistos disc, an artifact estimated to be around 3,700 years old, dating back to the Minoan civilization of ancient Greece. The disc itself is only about 6.3 inches in diameter and made of fired clay. It may look simple at first glance, but what's inscribed on its surface is what truly sends chills down people's spines. On this small disc, there are 241 pictographic symbols created from 45 completely distinct signs. What makes it even more extraordinary is that these symbols were not carved by hand in the usual way. They appear to have been stamped onto the surface, leading many researchers to believe this could be one of the earliest forms of printing in human history. Just hearing that already feels unusual, right? If you look closely at the symbols, you'll notice a wide range of images: men in motion, figures wearing feathered headdresses, women, children, animals, birds, even insects, weapons, and plants. All of them are arranged in a spiral pattern, as if telling a story. And yet, ironically, for hundreds of years, no one has truly understood what that story is. The disc was discovered in 1903 by Italian archaeologists during excavations of the ancient Phaistos Palace, located on the southern side of the island of Crete. From the moment it was found, it became one of the greatest mysteries in archaeology, because there are no similar texts to compare it with, and no key to decipher this strange language. It wasn't until decades later that a faint glimmer of hope appeared. Dr. Gareth Owens, a researcher at the Technological Educational Institute of Crete, suggested that he may have partially deciphered the hidden message on the disc. According to him, this is not an ordinary record, but a sacred prayer dedicated to the supreme goddess of the Minoan civilization. Even more intriguingly, among the symbols, he identified a key word that may be read as AKK, meaning pregnant mother. At this point, things start to make a bit more sense. One side of the disc is believed to honor pregnant women, while the other relates to childbirth. In other words, it may be a spiritual symbol connected to fertility, life, and the beliefs of ancient people. But think about it. If this really is a prayer, why would they go to such great lengths to create such a complex system of symbols? And why, even to this day, is there still no explanation that the entire scientific community fully agrees on? It's difficult to answer with certainty, but personally, I believe that perhaps this disc is not just an ancient object. It might be a message sent from the past, waiting for us to become intelligent enough to truly understand it. And who knows, what we now call a mystery might actually be just a small fragment of a civilization that once advanced far beyond what we can imagine. It's entirely possible. After all, what we truly know about the past is still very limited. Legendary object discovered in the tomb of Qin Shi Huang. You know, there are things we often think exist only in legends, yet they suddenly appear in real life, lying silently underground for more than 2,000 years. A perfect example of this comes from the massive mausoleum complex of Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor to unify China, where archaeologists have uncovered evidence of a strange chariot that had previously been mentioned only in historical tales and folklore. This wasn't a chariot pulled by horses, nor was it pulled by oxen. It was pulled by sheep. Sounds strange just hearing it, doesn't it? This discovery was recorded in the area known as the Western Tomb, part of the mausoleum complex located in Shanxi province, just a few miles northeast of the city of Xi'an. This location is not far from the famous site of the Terracotta Army, one of the greatest archaeological wonders in the world. But this time, what caught people's attention wasn't the clay soldiers, it was the skeletons of sheep. Specifically, researchers uncovered the remains of 6 sheep, still nearly intact, along with harness equipment used for pulling a vehicle. Although the actual wooden chariot had long since decayed, the arrangement of the skeletons alone was enough to make one thing clear. This was not a random group of animals buried by chance. It was a real chariot that once existed. According to lead archaeologist Zhang Wenxiao, horse-drawn and ox-drawn chariots were extremely common in ancient China. But chariots pulled by sheep were incredibly rare. So rare that they were mostly mentioned only in legends and unofficial historical records. And perhaps that rarity is exactly what makes this discovery so remarkable. According to stories passed down through time, this type of chariot was once considered a kind of love chariot of the emperor. The most famous tale is about Emperor Wu of Jin, the founder of the Western Jin dynasty. Legend has it that each night he would ride in a sheep-drawn chariot through his palace. Wherever the sheep decided to stop, he would spend the night there. It may sound random, but in reality, it was a rather unusual way of choosing among the many concubines in his court. From this story, a curious expression later emerged in Chinese culture: seeking luck in a sheep-drawn chariot, a phrase that reflects both chance and fate in life. Returning to the tomb site beyond the remains of the 6-sheep chariot, archaeologists also discovered a 4-wheeled wooden chariot, believed to have been horse-drawn, along with a beautifully decorated rectangular canopy. And that's not all. A series of bronze war chariots, iron tools, weapons, and horse-related artifacts were also excavated from the same area. Together, these findings not only help reconstruct aspects of ancient life and rituals, but also provide a clearer picture of the early Iron Age in China, a time when technology, warfare, and power began reshaping the course of history. At present, samples from the Western tomb are still being analyzed in laboratories. Scientists hope to soon determine the identity of the tomb's occupant. No one knows for certain whether it belonged to a member of the royal family, a powerful noble, or perhaps even someone directly connected to the emperor. What we do know is that the entire mausoleum complex of Qin Shi Huang spans about 10 square miles and took 36 years to complete, a massive structure filled with countless unsolved mysteries. And perhaps this strange sheep-drawn chariot is only a small piece of that enormous puzzle. 13,000-year-old stone settlement in Arabia that could rewrite history. There is a land that, for many years, was believed to be a barren desert, too harsh for human life to ever exist. And yet today, that very place has revealed evidence of an entire community that lived there tens of thousands of years ago. That place is Fujairah, a region in the United Arab Emirates. Until now, this area was thought to have been settled by humans only around 7,000 years ago. In other words, for a long time before that, it was essentially erased from the map of human habitation. But a recent large-scale excavation has completely changed that narrative. More than 30 archaeological sites have been discovered scattered across the region. What's remarkable is that these sites are not isolated, they are connected, forming a large settlement known as Jabal Kaf Adur. This is not evidence of a few wandering groups. It is proof of a stable, long-standing community. What has been found here is truly thought-provoking. Archaeologists have uncovered early forms of stone houses, built using high-quality limestone readily available in the area. These shelters were not primitive or random. They were strategically placed, allowing people to easily access various types of terrain, from plains and the western foothills of the Al-Hajar Mountains to nearby water sources. You see, they weren't just surviving. They were choosing where to live with remarkable intelligence. And there's more. The sediment layers at the site reveal 3 distinct levels of habitation, containing stone tools, animal bones, and traces of hearths. This indicates that humans lived here continuously from about 13,000 to 7,500 years ago. In other words, they didn't just pass through, they settled and stayed. Previously, there was a theory suggesting that humans may have appeared in this region early on, but then left during the last glacial maximum around 20,000 years ago, when the climate became extremely harsh and dry for thousands of years. But this new discovery proves the opposite. Humans did not leave. They stayed, adapted, and endured. Around 10,500 years ago, the environment in this region began to change. The climate gradually became more humid due to the balance of different weather systems. Today, Fujairah lies at the intersection of multiple climate influences, from winter rains and hot summer shamal winds to monsoon systems from the Indian Ocean. This unique combination created conditions that allowed human life to persist. But what makes this discovery truly significant is not just that the climate eventually became more favorable. It's that humans were already here long before that, around 13,000 years ago, when the world was still locked in a cold ice age. In other words, they lived here when conditions were at their worst. The timeline of this settlement also coincides with the period when agriculture first began to emerge in the Near East, considered the cradle of early farming, around 12,000 years ago. Meanwhile, it wasn't until about 11,700 years ago that glaciers in the northern hemisphere began to retreat, and more than 10,000 years ago, before the Ice Age truly came to an end. So what does this mean? It means that while much of the world was still struggling with extreme cold, in one corner of the Arabian Peninsula, humans had already begun building a way of life, adapting to their environment, and possibly even laying the groundwork for the earliest developments of agriculture. By now you can probably see it too. The history we thought we knew may not be entirely accurate, and who knows, beneath those seemingly lifeless sands, there may still be countless other secrets waiting to be uncovered. It's just a matter of whether we're patient enough to dig a little deeper. 13 alien-like skulls discovered near a Maya pyramid. At the archaeological site of Moral Reforma, located in the state of Tabasco, Mexico, scientists have uncovered 13 skulls dating back more than 1,000 years. This was once an ancient city of the Maya civilization, a culture that flourished for centuries before being abandoned around 1000 AD. But what caught everyone's attention wasn't the number of skulls, it was their shape. These skulls are unusually elongated toward the back, resembling what we often see in movies about extraterrestrials. At first glance, you might even think they belong to something not of this earth. However, the truth points in a completely different direction. Research shows that this unusual shape was not natural, but the result of an ancient practice known as cranial deformation. Maya children had their heads bound for years, causing their skulls to grow in an elongated form. It may sound cruel, but to them, it was a sign of status, a symbol of the elite class in their society. Even that alone shows how different their beliefs were from ours. But the most unsettling part comes next. Among the 13 skulls, at least 2 show clear signs of being cleanly cut in half, with remarkably sharp and precise edges. These are not cracks from age, nor accidental damage. They are evidence of deliberate human action. This detail has led scientists to believe that these individuals were victims of a chilling sacrificial ritual, and the place where this ritual took place was none other than a pyramid, also serving as a temple, located in the eastern plaza of the ancient city. Just imagine it. In a sacred space where people once prayed and worshipped, bloody sacrifice rituals were carried out. Individuals who once held high status, their skulls carefully shaped since childhood, ultimately became offerings to the gods. Isn't that terrifying? All of these findings were announced after extensive research conducted by Mexico's National Institute of Anthropology and History. Their goal was not only to understand death, but also to decode life, examining everything from customs and rituals to the diet of the ancient Maya. So far, scientists have conducted detailed analysis on only 5 of the 13 skulls. The results show that all of them were male, ranging in age from approximately 17 to 45 years old, determined through the level of tooth wear. Some were very young, which makes the question even heavier. Why were they chosen for sacrifice? And there's more. Another mysterious detail is that some of the graves were covered in a red substance believed to be cinnabar, a material typically reserved for elite burial rituals. The arrangement of the tombs also appears highly ceremonial, as if everything had been carefully prepared for a specific purpose. But what that purpose was remains unknown. It could have been to pray for rain, for good harvests, or to appease the gods during difficult times. Or perhaps it held a deeper meaning that we still don't fully understand. What we do know is this: these alien-like skulls are not evidence of extraterrestrial beings, but rather, they are traces of a civilization whose beliefs and rituals were so complex that even modern humans can't help but feel a chill when looking back at them. You see, every discovery is like a reminder that history is not a story that has already been finished. It is still being written every single day. History is far more complex than the lines we read in textbooks. It is a maze full of mysteries, where each new discovery opens the door to countless unanswered questions. So, if one day the truth is fully revealed, do you think we'll simply be amazed, or will we have to rewrite the entire history of humanity from the ground up? Don't hesitate to leave your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to give ancient history a like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss any more fascinating discoveries. For now, goodbye, and I'll see you in the next video.